Hi there, my name is Matti Sulanto and in this video I'm gonna take a look at the Lumix G90 camera. This is my review based on 3 months of using this camera. But before I talk more about the camera, please consider subscribing to my channel and tap the bell down there so you'll get notified whenever I post a new video. And I usually post a new video twice a week. My camera here is the G90 because I'm in EU, but in North America this is called the G95, which is identical to this one except for the rear screen, which has different type of display panel in it. I have no idea why Panasonic decided to use this kind of model names and model numbering. I think it's a bit confusing, but I guess there must have been a good reason. This camera is not mine, it's on a long-term loan from Panasonic. I got this in mid-June, so I've been using this now for about 3 months. And this review is based on what I normally shoot. And that is documentary, street, occasional portraits, travel and family photos. If you're looking for information how this camera performs in, say, wildlife or sports photography, I'm afraid I can't give you that information because I haven't used this camera for sports or wildlife. This is not also a full review in the sense that I'm only talking about the features that matter to me and the features that I use when I'm doing my photography. And I'll put a link to the full specifications in the description so you can take a look if you are interested. I don't think it makes sense for me to go through all of them here. The G90 is a successor to the G80/85. While it's not a major update or upgrade, there are some nice improvements still, like the 20 megapixel sensor, higher flash sync speed, unlimited video recording time, V-Log L video picture profile, headphone jack for monitoring video audio, and USB charging. None of those are really major, like I said, but still really nice improvements nevertheless. The G90 is a compact-sized dust and splash proof camera, which is one of the reasons why I chose this to be my main photography camera on my recent trip to Malaysia. At least I'd like to think this is a compact-sized camera body, but of course that's a little bit subjective. However, I picked this because I think so, and the dust and splash proof design is very handy, especially in the tropics where it rains often. Also the kit lens, the 12 to 60 millimeter that comes with the camera, if you buy the kit, is also dust and splash proof. I didn't have this lens with me on my trip, but it was not because this is a bad lens. This is actually a really good lens. I've made a comparison between this lens and the Panasonic Leica version of the 12 to 60 millimeter zoom. There's a link up there. Please take a look if you're interested. I just had to leave this lens out because I couldn't take unlimited amount of gear on the trip, and I had already other lenses that I chose and that I needed there. The control layout is very similar to the G9, and by the way, I have a comparison between these two cameras. There's a link up there, so if you're interested, please take a look at that also. Yeah, so the control layout is very similar between these two cameras, with one major exception: there's no joystick on the G90. It's not a deal breaker, but after using the G9 and also the S1R, I noticed I sometimes missed the joystick. However, the touchpad is a very good way to move the autofocus point around, as long as you don't need to wear gloves. There are 3 command dials, front dial, rear dial, and one on the back too. So if you wish, you can have a dedicated dial for each exposure value, which is really convenient, especially if you are using manual exposure mode. In addition to that, there are lots of buttons that you can reprogram to your liking. And the customization options customization. And the customization options are really versatile and good, and I think everybody can find a pleasing configuration with this camera. There's only one card slot, but I don't think it's a really that big of a deal. I mean, sometimes cards fail, but not that often after all. The viewfinder is a 2.36 million dot thing, which is today pretty common already, but it still offers quite nice viewfinder experience. It's easy to evaluate the exposure, autofocus or focus and everything through the viewfinder if you prefer to use viewfinder. If you prefer to use the rear screen, it's a flippy screen, which is a pretty good compromise, because this camera also has very nice video features, and if you like to film yourself when you're traveling or you want to do some vlogging or something, then the flippy screen is very practical. If this was strictly only a photo camera, photography camera, I would prefer a tilt screen like the one on the S1R, but since this camera has such nice video features, I think people are going to use this a lot for video, and there the flippy screen is pretty much invaluable. The autofocus is of course Panasonic's DFD system, which at least for my photography seems to work really well. Like I said at the beginning, I didn't try this camera for any kind of action or sports, because that's not really my thing. But I noticed that DP Review tested the autofocus on moving subjects and their results were pretty okay. But I guess if you are a hardcore sports shooter or flying bird shooter, this would be not your first choice of camera. But I think for somebody like me who occasionally sometimes shoots some action or sometimes tries to shoot some flying birds, I think this does a pretty good job. The mechanical shutter of this camera goes all the way to 1/4000 of a second, but if you would like to use f1.4 or f1.2 lens in bright sunshine, then the 4000 of a second is not enough, and then you can use the electronic shutter that will go all the way to 1/16,000 of a second, which is like 2 stops faster than the 4000 of a second, and that should be enough for pretty much everything. And then of course there's in-body image stabilizer inside of this camera, which combined with a stabilized lens like the kit lens for example, gives you Panasonic's dual IS, and that offers 5 stops worth of stabilization, which is really practical and offers a lot of flexibility in handheld shooting. The sensor inside of this camera is the same or similar 20 megapixel sensor that's inside, for example, the G9, and therefore the image quality is also essentially the same as on the best current Micro Four Thirds cameras, and that is very good. And like I said earlier, this is also a pretty capable video camera. This offers 4K UHD up to 30p. There's no time limit in video recording, there's a microphone and a headphone jack, and there's a V-Log flat profile. Although it's only 8-bit, it still offers a little bit more flexibility in terms of color grading compared to some other picture profiles. And then there are also some customizable autofocus settings for video, and those can help you customize the autofocus to work to your liking in some situations. The excellent image stabilizer also helps a lot in video, especially if you turn on the IS lock function or feature. Then it's almost impossible to introduce any kind of camera shake in the video, even if you try. The IS lock doesn't work, or it's not suitable for any kind of tilting or panning or moving camera. But if you are filming something where you plan to keep the camera still and handheld, I recommend you turn on the IS lock, because it's almost like a miracle. It's unbelievable how steady it makes the video footage. The video quality is really good, especially in good light. But because there's 1.25 crop in 4K, the low light quality suffers a bit compared to, for example, the G9, which uses the full width of the sensor even in 4K. But even so, I would say this is quite capable and nice video camera, and you can make some really nice looking video footage on this camera if you just know what you're doing. And there's one photo feature that I almost forgot to mention, and that's the live composite mode. So far it's a unique feature on this camera. No other Lumix camera has it so far at the time of recording this video. It's a really cool feature, so if you are into any kind of night photography or light painting, then this is the camera for you if you're looking at the Lumix camera. The battery of this camera has a SIPA rating of 290 shots, which doesn't sound a lot, but I never had any problems with the battery or the power running out in the middle of my shooting. However, I think if you know that you have a long day ahead of you, I recommend you have a spare battery with you, or at least a USB power bank. This camera has USB charging and also USB power, but you can't use them both at the same time. If you turn on the camera, the USB will power the camera, and if you turn the camera off, then the USB will charge the battery. I really enjoyed using this camera, especially on my trip to Malaysia. This is relatively lightweight and compact, and also dust and splash proof design, so it makes a really great travel camera. This camera also offers a ton of features both in photography and video, and also the control layout is very nice and very close to the flagship G9. Whether it's worth upgrading from G80/85, it's hard to say, and it's a personal matter or personal choice. Some people always like the latest camera, and some people like to use their current camera as long as it's working. But if you are planning on buying a new Micro Four Thirds camera and for some reason you don't care about the flagship models, maybe they are too expensive, too big, too heavy, or too something, then this camera, the G90, is definitely worth taking a look at. Bear in mind also that I'm a Lumix ambassador. I might be biased, so I recommend you also check out a couple of other reviews so you get more balanced impression on this camera. And by the way, I'm not getting paid by Panasonic for making these videos. I'm just making my videos so I can share my experiences with you guys. If you have this camera, please leave me a comment down below and tell me how you like it, if you agree what I just said, or if you don't agree, please let me know that also. Thank you so much for watching again, and I'll see you in the next one. But before you go, you may want to check out these two videos.